I'm enjoying this conversation a lot, though. I really want to explore more about how the economic and political situation in Africa is actually impacting the mindset of Africans globally. We started it with the whole Nigerian thing when we talked about your friend that was Nigerian that met African Americans and how he felt towards them and so on. But are there any similarities to the post-slavery syndrome that you talked about and what's happening now with regards to how the world sees Africa and how that affects our mental health as Africans in the diaspora?
That's very interesting. I think there are some things that overlap. As I said, it might look different within, let's say, African Americans versus Africans. But I think a lot of the times, the fact that, as we just discussed, everything, it can feel for a lot of Nigerians and people in Africa that everything that is good has to be found in the West. Even though there's already those effects of colonization, I think what that can do is even reinforce that more. Sometimes I hear people say things along the lines of, for example, Nigeria can never be good and we can never, because we're just not, it's almost as if it's a biological thing, like we're not capable of it. It's so interesting because Nigerians, again, do so well a lot of the times when they are abroad. And there's different debates about that in terms of, is it that when people migrate, they feel like they have to work harder and all of that stuff. But I think there is something also about, as I said, how does that impact, how people feel about their own country, but also how they feel about how people also view them, right? Because I think there's something about the immigrant experience and how people view you. And even as a Black British person, the white majority will still see you as an African, right? I remember one of the first jobs I ever had, and someone asked me, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Nigeria. They were like, isn't it poor there? And I was just thinking, why are you saying this? But also, it makes me think that the economic situation in Africa, it still reflects on us as Black people, even if we're second, third, fourth generation. So what does that do to one's psyche, and how does that even impact me, right, about how I feel about Africa? For me, it's on two levels. There's one in terms of just obviously economic insecurity. Right now, there's this whole Japa movement causes people to want to leave, right? And what does that do to one's psyche when you have to rebuild your life, when you feel like the country that is, the land of your ancestors and everything? But it can make a lot of people feel hopeless and wanting to give up and just feel like there's nothing. And I don't blame anyone for moving, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying how it affects them on a psychological level, that I have to really assimilate to Britishness and British culture. And I've seen this amongst a lot of Nigerians. Some people just are like, I don't even want to teach my child anything about Nigeria, because what has Nigeria done for me? I don't want to teach my child the language. And then their children then start having that identity crisis and things like that, because they themselves might not have that because they grew up in Nigeria and they're comfortable with themselves, but their children did not have that, right? So that can create that. And then there's, as I said, the image of Africa in general, which I think we as the children of the diaspora, we carry with us. No matter if you've never gone to Africa, you're like, I don't want anything to do with that. We carry the kind of stain, in the sense of where Africa is at the moment.
Definitely. You were talking about how it reflects on us, the economic and political situation, and how we carry that around with us. And I can definitely attest to that, because I think this is partly what made me, when I came to the UK, as you can tell, some people who aren't from England think I have a British accent. But the people who are truly from London know that I don't sound completely like a Londoner. They know that my accent is a bit different.
It's a bit of a mishmash.
It's exactly a bit of a mishmash. But when I first came to this country, obviously, I think the reason for that, 'cause I've been here for a long time, I still sound like this. I can't help it now. But when I first came here, I was seized for my African accent. And I think because I was seized for it, I was like, okay, I'm going to double down and I'm not changing it just for that. It was like my way of rebelling and fighting back. I'm not going to try to form and try to speak this whole, blah, blah, and do all that. Like, I'm going to deliberately rebel. I'm going to stick to what I know. And that was what started me on this journey, because I started thinking, is it so bad to be African? And the people that would make fun of me were mostly Black people, sometimes Nigerians themselves.
Yeah.
Obviously, this was before it became cool to be African. But it was Jamaicans and Nigerians, and there were a few white people, but it was mostly Black people. It got me thinking, is it so bad to be African? And like, why? And why is it bad to be African? I would look at it, and I'm the type that I don't like to feel sorry for myself. All I know is fight back. When people would say stuff like, go back to your country or something like that, I'll be like, yeah, I would, except it's not good there.
Interesting.
Why isn't it good there? Thinking like that is what led me to learn about geopolitics and learn about history and want to know, why isn't my country good? Why am I having to put up with all this BS and all these people chatting shit to me when I could be in my own country where my people are and everything. But obviously it's not good there. And why is it not good there? And then you learn about that. And then I got older, I got money, I started traveling to all these European countries. I don't like going to too many European countries now because when I see racism, I can't, even if I don't see it, first of all, when I see it, I have to step in because I'm like, nah, F this. Secondly, even if I don't see it overtly, I still feel like I can feel it in some countries that I go to.
Yeah, it's covert racism all around us.
Yeah, and it's like from their perspective, maybe I can see a little bit of why they would think that. If you have tons of migrants from South Sudan or Chad who are trying to make a better life for themselves and they come here and they end up just constantly selling stuff on the road and everything like that. They're selling little tourism things or trying to do whatever it is, they do whatever it is to make ends meet. I can see how obviously they'll be doing some things that are not legit, some things that are not legal, and suddenly there's this whole stigma of, oh, black people tend to do things that aren't legit. So when I look at it from their perspective, I'm like, this is probably what they're thinking. But then I go into those countries and like France is a major example. Italy is another one. But yeah, France is one I remember mainly. But I go into these cities and these countries and I feel the same thing. And I'm like, when I see them looking at me, you're probably looking at us like you're better than us right now. And that's because your flipping country back in the days went to my continent and stole a whole bunch of stuff. And now you out here looking at me like you're better than me. That anger still boils up and I'm like, I can't stand this. That's why I'm doing One Spirit. That's why I'm here. We need to do this empowerment. We need to figure out a way to lift ourselves up. And I genuinely believe that we have to move in silence. I genuinely believe they're going to try to stop us if we start succeeding in it. I know that for a fact because I know that capitalism is based upon the cheapening of labor and resources of the people of the global South. All this wealth that the British and the Americans are so proud of wouldn't exist without the exploitation of the global South.
Definitely.
At some point when we start trying to rise up, they're going to try to stop us.
Yeah,
I know that.
Yeah.
I'm just being real with the world right now. And anybody that says it's not true, they're not being real because it's just the way it is. I don't even know where I'm going with this.
The thing is, what you said, there's so much truth in it. And it made me think there's two ways people go with that. You know, sometimes people internalize it. So it's like, my country is not doing well, so that means we are not good as people. And they internalize that, and they internalize that anti-blackness and self-hatred. And then there's the anger as well. Like, sometimes I always think Nigerians were a bit...
That's what I felt.
There's the anger. But I think what you're talking about is right. I think there's righteous anger, right? But you're projecting your anger, I feel like, in the right way in terms of the people who... and the systems that cause the anger. But sometimes the anger, I think it's in the book on the post-traumatic slave syndrome that I was talking about. One of the things that she says is one of the symptoms you can say of it is like, she says, ever-present anger, feeling like one's goal is unattainable, feeling like, for example, someone in a system like Nigeria where it's like, no matter what I do, I've heard people tell me they got into school, they had the PhD, they did everything, but the system is not allowing them to succeed, right? So there's that anger that boils up. And then sometimes, as I said, the way people deal with that anger is different, right? Some people are just like, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take it out on other people. But there's that kind of simmering pot that's going on, I think, a lot of the times where there's this constant boiling, right? Because people on the whole are not satisfied with the situation. So the way people translate that is where it can either be productive or non-productive. But either way, I think it's just a symptom of the system not working. And also, just as Black people, it's very, very frustrating because for us as children of the diaspora, the question is, where do we belong? And I have debates with people all the time about, should I stay in the UK? Should I go to somewhere in Africa? Should I go to somewhere in the Middle East and different places? And a lot of these conversations, what I realize is even if you go to other regions in the world, there's still racism. Black people are still looked down upon. You're still in the same boat.
Across the world, everybody sees us as the bottom.
Exactly.
Whether you go to China, you go to the land of the white man, even if you go to South America, Black people are looked down upon.
It's still the same thing. It's like my husband was raised he's Nigerian, but he was raised in the Middle East. And we just have conversations about how the Middle East is a whole different ballgame. I don't even want to go there. You can imagine, guys, there is like crazy amount of racism there and a lot of stuff. I always think that the bottom line is, to be honest, and I don't know if it'll happen in our lifetime, but until Africa gets to a good point, economically, it is gonna part of racism in a sense, and I'm not saying this is justified, but I think part of it is a bit about that. It's like, oh, but you guys are inferior because you guys are not doing well. So I think there is that going on.
Yeah.